Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games, back with another cool pinball repair video for you this evening. We had a customer bring us by this Bally Freedom pinball machine. Now I'm going to guess this came out in 1976. But I don't know that for sure, but I'd bet money on it. Okay? It's in pretty decent shape. They want us to fix it up, get it up and playing for them again. They said they'd owned it for a long, long time. And this one comes from West Virginia, which is where I was born. So I'm real excited about it. Me and it both found our way to South Carolina. Isn't that awesome? It and I. All right, so we're going to do a video here where we kind of check out the condition that it's in when it came in. Looks like it's going to clean up pretty nice, is just my opinion, but we'll see. It's number 3879 on the cabinet, and then on the back box it is number 3879, so that matches. Someone has repainted the frame on it, which is we do that a lot too. And the way you can tell is if there's you know, a dent like that and there's paint on the dent, then it must have been repainted after the dent was made. So up here you see there's a scratch, but there's no paint on it because it's just that part hasn't been repainted. But someone's repainted it white. Looks pretty good. But other than that, it's kind of original. So I'd bet dollars to donuts it came out for the bicentennial in 1976. So you've got this eagle here on the side. Of course, it was done with a stencil. If you get close to anything that's been stenciled, you can see overspray, which is part of the charm, right? So it's not a perfect star. They just held up a stencil on the whole side, and it wasn't perfectly flat against the paint. It had a little bit of a lip, or a little bit of a lift, and so whenever they sprayed it, a little bit of paint went under it, and that's what that is. So it appears that they did the white first, and then they did the blue, and then they did the red over the top of it, which is an interesting thing because by doing that, they gave they kind of made another color by making the feathers that went over the blue bird a little darker. It's an interesting choice. And that's how they did the feet, the claws, the talons. Very presentable. They did a similar thing on the back here. And the bird standing on the little shield. You can see the registration slightly off. Again, they were just holding up a stencil and going at it. Or I don't know, the stars are kind of on. Or oh, you know what? The stars are completely on top of the blue. So there was no white area for the star to fit in. They just laid it up. So it's a little bit off. This is the kind of stuff, though, that, you know, it's part of what makes it what it is. It's all done by hand, people. Same thing over here. I've talked about splatter paint before. The way they would paint these is they would use cheap plywood to make them, first and foremost. And then they would paint the base coat, which on this one was white. And then the issue that you have with that is it looks kind of cheap because it's cheap plywood. So let me see if I can find a spot to prove the point. I don't see anything. Like, sometimes you can see a biscuit in it where they put the plywood together. Let's see if there's one on it. I don't see one. Sometimes you'll have like a really bad area, but I'll get real close to it just so you can see. There you go. See all the texture of the plywood? Well, if you make this, if you build this, all of those little imperfections show up on it. And it might be like that it's really bad here, but over here it's not that bad. And then you stencil over it, you can see all of the places that are not quite right. So the way they came up with to kind of hide that a little bit was they used splatter paint. So they would paint the whole thing white, and then they would paint little dots all over the cabinet. They call it splatter paint. Gottlieb called theirs webbing. It was basically whenever it got on the assembly line, they would have a paint gun with the nozzle messed up that basically would just spit paint all over the place. And they would run that perfectly white cabinet by and put little splatter all over it. And the reason that they did that was because since everything isn't just perfectly white, there are little imperfections everywhere, which is the splatter paint. It hides all the imperfections in the plywood. Just makes it look a little nicer. Front looks really cool. So it's a nice, pretty clean game, really. You know, all things considered. It's 45 years old now. It's got Bally's slightly newer shooter rod. Bally's cool coin door in nice shape. This particular game came from, I'm going to go ahead and show you this music company with their phone number and everything. They may still be in business. If you call them and bug them, they'll probably cuss you out. Or if they're not in business anymore, no harm. But it was originally operated by Mountaineer Music. Pinballs, jukeboxes, pool tables. 6838 Valley Brook Drive, Charleston, West Virginia. License number. I guess in West Virginia you have to have a license to operate games or something. And then that was their phone number. So it's before area codes were really, you know, there were area codes, but they didn't include them in most phone numbers because local people would be calling. Before area codes were overlain on each other, I guess. It may still be like that in Charleston. So, 6838 Valley Brook Drive. Let's go see where that is. Well, that's a trip. Okay, so 6838 Valley Brook Drive is actually a house in Charleston, so don't bother these people. That must have been they were running it out of their house previously, okay? But Mountaineer Music, so this is out Sissonville Road in Charleston, West Virginia. Literally, that's where I'm from back in the day, right? Whenever I saw this game, whenever they dropped it off, I thought, Mountaineer Music, I'll bet they used to operate all of the arcade games in Charleston around, you know, the west side, you know, maybe the west side, which is where I grew up, and, you know, when I was a kid, when I was really young, and my father grew up. So my father's passed away now, but he used to tell me whenever I was a kid that he used to play Galaxian down at the bowling alley all the time. And so I've mentioned on a couple of videos before, it would be interesting to see if anybody else ever played that same Galaxian at that bowling alley, if anybody remembers that. Nobody's ever came forward and said they remember, you know, seeing that a Galaxian operated in that bowling alley back in the day. But, interestingly enough, I just Googled Mountaineer Music. It looks like they may actually still be in business, but they're not using their home address anymore. They're using a business address. So let me show you where that is. So apparently this is their business at 807 West Washington Street. So I grew up right down the road from this street on the west side of Charleston, West Virginia, and my dad grew up there before me, way back in the day. This school, right across the street, is my father's high school. This is Stonewall Jackson High School. Whenever I was a kid, I was in the 6th grade up the road, and they turned the high school into the junior high school. So I went to the 7th grade in this school, and every day used to walk home from school by walking across the street, right? and walking on down that way, down to my house, about 2 miles away. So this would have been back in the 80s. Now, I don't think it was this building. I think it was this building. My dad used to tell me all the time that, way back when he went to school in the 60s, telling you all the old war stories, he said every day after school he would walk down to the hamburger place, like the ice cream soda shop, whatever, whatever they were called back in the day. And I think it was in this building. It was either that building or this building. It was probably this one. It looks a little more like it. And he used to tell me how he went in there and he'd play the jukebox and everything, and how cool it was back then when rock and roll had just came out. And, you'd go in there and listen to the jukebox and listen to the new Chuck Berry record and all that. And so when I was a kid, I used to just love these stories, man, and I still do, but, there's this old Roger Miller song where he says, what's that line? Let me go find that, too, because it perfectly sums up what I'm talking about here. Okay, so here's the Roger Miller song. It's called Home. It says, well, I remember stories that my pappy used to tell. Yeah, my eyes would get big, my chest just to swell. I could sit for hours and listen with glee as he tell of how he lived when he was a boy like me. Right? So that's what I'm talking about here. So it's just an interesting little connection that they appear to be in the building right across the street, or right next door to the soda shop my dad used to talk about all the time. And that I used to walk by every day whenever I was in junior high school. So whenever I saw that and it had that sign on it, I immediately thought, and it's been in our shop here for probably 3 weeks. Whenever I saw that, I immediately thought, oh, Mountaineer Music. Yeah, they probably maybe they'd operated that Galaxian that my dad was always telling me that he played at the bowling alley. Well, they very well could have, but something was telling me, because it's my my hometown, so I immediately remembered that, and there may not be any other music companies in that town, so pretty cool little trip down memory lane. But that's the operator that it came from. So this customer, they bought it years ago. Hopefully they didn't steal it, and I'm outing them now. Hopefully they bought it and paid for it years ago. But if they bought it and paid for it years ago and it's legally theirs, this is where they got it from originally. So we'll go back and look at the machine a little bit. It's a small world, people. Okay, so now at first glance, this Backglass, let me brighten it up a little bit. At first glance, this Backglass looks excellent. But looks can be deceiving. So the red is in very nice shape. The white is in very nice shape. The blue is in very nice shape. There is another blue that appears to be in very nice shape. Okay? There is a gold that is in very nice shape. The black is in very nice shape. Look how that looks like the Capitol. That's kind of neat. So the skin tones are like a pink and a gold. Right? That's Abe Lincoln with hair. He had hair, didn't he? Yeah, he had hair. Never mind. I take that back, Abe. There's Abe Lincoln with his usual hair. It looks like it's in excellent shape, but it's not. The drum, the brown, is flaking away pretty bad. And then his pantaloons, the brown, is flaking away pretty bad. But that's the only couple bad spots on the whole glass. Can you believe that? It's almost perfect. I guess he's starting to delaminate a little bit in his jacket and stuff too. So we're going to clear coat it in a later video and save that as best we can, very carefully with some saran wrap and stuff. We should be able to get that to lay down a little bit. What a Backglass, kind of interesting. So you got these three figures, marching off the war, playing the fife and two drums. Did they have double drums? Was there only one fife player for two drum players? Maybe back then it was just whatever you could get. But it's an interesting Backglass, and you can imagine in 1976 with the bicentennial coming up, Bally probably thought, hey, let's see if we can make some money off of this chip. So nice back glass that we'll hopefully be able to save and keep from flaking away. And it's just that one color. So, you know, what's one of the things people say about LEDs? Oh, they're not hot, so the back glass won't get destroyed. Well, I don't think it's really the heat of the lights, because if it was, all the other paints would be messed up too. It's just that one color. Something wrong with that color. They didn't do the brown right, people. The brown was wrong on this one. Should have done the brown a little better. It has an interesting playfield. Very interesting layout. A little different than you usually see. So down here, you got the same thing going on as usual. Double out lanes, double in lanes. Perfectly symmetrical. Exactly how 1,000 other machines are. Okay. And then it has this bonus kind of arc here in the middle. That's very nicely done. The artwork is interesting. You've got the Liberty Bell there with its famous crack. These guys are reading something, which I assume is the Constitution or something. These guys over here are writing it. That must be Jefferson there. That's probably Ben Franklin. Nah, that ain't Franklin. If that was Ben Franklin, he'd be hitting on some women or something. Look, there's another Liberty Bell. But that's pretty interesting. Then you got this. Nice little plastic here. Nice stoic look. And over here, you got the man himself, George Washington. Just above him, you have Uncle Sam, who is kind of a caricature of Abe Lincoln, but I don't know the history of Uncle Sam. And then the same, you got two guys playing drums and a fife player. And then you've got this guy who kind of looks like Beethoven, actually, but I'm going to guess that's Jefferson again, if I was just guessing. So, more interesting than that, though, is the layout of the playfield. You know, you've got a square piece of wood here. You can do it 1,000 different ways. And so a lot of times they do the exact same layout. And this one's similar, but it's just got just enough to make it interesting. So the bottom is perfectly symmetrical. The shooter lane is short. Instead of going all the way up, you can actually, you know, there's a saucer hidden here, but you can overshoot the saucer. So it would be possible to have the ball go over that and back into the shooter lane. Something might be missing there or something. I don't know if it should be like that, but we'll look whenever we mess with it. It says scores wheel value. Well, there's this huge wheel in the middle of the playfield. It doesn't move or anything. It's just lights with one rollover right in the middle that you can actually hit. So this is just an interesting little area here. There's two spinners. This one says 1776. This one says 1976. All right. So any game with double shoot spinners is a cool shot. Like, that's just fun, man. And then up here, you've got a saucer, but look how there's a lot of open space on either side of it. So it's going to be, you're not necessarily going to land in that saucer every time. Let me see if I'm correct about that. So see all the open space on either side of it? And then we've got this Bally Night Rider here that we're getting to soon, people. I know everybody's wanting us to fix this one, but also double spinners, but they're aimed a little differently. And look how the saucer, it's a little easier to land in because there's just not as much open space on either side. So if you hit those rubbers and are bouncing around, you're probably going to land in the saucer. Well, on this one, not so much. Look, you could easily go by on either side. It says scores wheel value. So, you know, that's a choice, that's a deliberate choice that the guy that designed the machine made to make that a little harder to land in on purpose. You've also got this little cut through here. Now you can see how that's going to work. The ball's going to be up here bouncing off the pop bumpers and bounce back through there. You're not really going to make this shot and then have the ball go over here. If you make this shot, it's going to continue through and all the way to the top. So that relief there is so that the ball can get back through here. So it kind of a little bit cutthroat. So you see over here, it's not really like that. They've just got that stand up there that you can hit. So it's just choices that the designer's making. And then you've got you see this kind of 3 pop bumper arrangement all the time where they're kind of off to the side a little bit. So that's cool. And then the 1 target up there. And then you have 5 drop targets. But because of the way they're angled, I think it would probably be harder to sweep them. So if you get a really lucky shot, sometimes you can sweep drop targets. So I don't know if you could on these or not either. Knight Rider has 2 sets, 1 on each side. I don't know if you could sweep those. Sometimes, the way they're arranged, you can hit it just right and it'll knock down several of them instead of just the one that you hit. So I don't think they quite got it where you can do that on this one. And then that, again, that area over there is fairly strange. But a very interesting playfield. It'll be cool to see how that plays and how that saucer comes into play and how often you land in the top saucer. I like it. What can I say? Okay, so my first thought on just looking inside of it is the thing is in great shape. I mean, it's in fantastic shape for its age. 45 years old. Very clean. I don't see anything hacked up. Now, we have just done the Bally flip-flop video that we did before this, and I would imagine that flip-flop couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 games before this, you wouldn't think. I guess I need to look that up. But there's several differences between the flip-flop and this one. This one's a little bit... It's just it's even laid out a little different. The transformer is back here. On the flip-flop it was up here. Nice and clean. Has the coin unit and the ball count unit in the bottom, just like the flip-flop did. Has, of course, the same chime box that the flip-flop did. Flip-flop did. That's going to be a tongue twister. There may be something missing there. Or maybe that's just a handle to grab the thing. Okay, so one of the things that I found, this is from 1976, obviously. There's a receipt in it. I don't really want to show it. I'll show part of it. There's a receipt in it where the customer bought it in 1980 from the music company. So they've owned it for 40 years in their house. Isn't that pretty cool? I'll show you that here in a minute whenever I look at the paperwork. But the bottom of the playfield, very clean. But one of the things I'm noticing is that the units are all made a little different than they were on the flip-flop. Let me, I'm going to go real quick, grab the dates on those and figure out how far off we're talking here, because most of you folks probably just saw the flip-flop videos not too long ago. So the flip-flop was released in January, and the Freedom Bicentennial game was released in 1976 in what month? July, of course. I think I would have known that. But yeah, everything's been redesigned. So Bally had redone like all their stuff, basically. But this one apparently was made as an EM and a solid state. So by this time, they had already went solid state. So a lot of this stuff is, I mean, it's all the EM stuff, but like the chimes they would have been using for solid state by this point, although it's exactly the same. Well, the stepper units wouldn't have been in the solid state ones either, but for whatever reason, they had redesigned everything that they weren't going to use much anymore. They look different, things, whatever. But man, it looks really clean. They're in great shape. And I guess since it's been, it was operated for 4 years and then has been in home use for the last 40 years, I guess this is how clean they are whenever they've been taken care of. So someone has done a really good job keeping this thing safe and protected. So we'll see if we can fix up the Backglass for them, and they'll get some more time out of it. But yeah, it's in very clean shape. I don't see anything messed up. You've got the lock coil, the lock relay here that's charred a little bit, but they're all like that because that first 4 years it was probably on pretty much the whole time. So let's look in the back box here. Lighten this up too so you can see everything that you want to check out. And again, if you saw the flip-flop, it had 4 big relays up here that did the 100,000 point lights. Okay, well this one has the same thing, but they're smaller. So they're not latch relays, they're just regular relays. And you can see it says first player 100,000, second, third, fourth player. So they redesigned that between January and July, even though they went solid state. You wouldn't think they'd take all the trouble to do that, but they did. The score reels look the same-ish. You know, they lock in the same. You've got this player up unit. It's a little different, so they redesigned that. And it could be that they already had a different design, that they used one design on some machines and one on others, but there's the credit unit. Would be interesting to see how they did free play. We'll figure that out whenever we do this Backbox video. The Jones plugs look nice and clean. Everything looks clean. And then you've got your point relays here. So this is, I'm just guessing, 10 point, 100 point, 1,000 point, reset number 1, reset number 2. You can tell these are reset relays just because they have more switches. So basically the reset relay on the bottom is going to turn those on. Those are the score reset relays. And they've got 8 switches on each because one of them is going to reset these 4 and these 4 back to 0. And one of them is going to reset these 4 and these 4 back to 0. But it's very clean, and I believe that is probably because they had a door on it the whole time. So whenever you've got a door on it, you end up with nice clean wires that you can read the color code on very easily. Now these are not cloth covered wires though, so that's kind of cheating. These are more modern, you know, what is that, plastic covered, vinyl covered, what is that, what would that be considered? And on our previous one, they were still cloth covered, weren't they? On the flip-flop, I believe they were still cloth covered. So it's just strange that in January they were doing it one way, and in July they were doing it another way, even though they were no longer going to make EM pinball machines. That's just weird. Whenever we do this rawhide over here, we've got a Stern rawhide. Some of those towards the end actually had PCBs on them with edge connectors and stuff, even though they were electromechanical. Also, one thing to notice, so these are the GI light sockets on the back box. The ones on the flip-flop were crappy, man. They just weren't really made very well. So it must have been a thing that they tried for a little while and it didn't work out. So I'm glad to see that they put nicer. The ones on the flip-flop are kind of like a one-piece design. They're just nowhere near as nice. But yeah, I'm impressed. The thing's nice and clean. So let's look at what's in it, the schematics and the paperwork and that stuff, and I'll show you that receipt, and that'll be a good little introduction to what we're going to be working on here. Okay, I'm going to show you this receipt because it doesn't have any personal information on it except for the information of the music company, which was public, and they had their stickers on the machines with their phone number and stuff. So I don't think it's really doing them any harm, and if you know, it's not my intention to dox anybody or anything, but it's a public company. So for the historic value, I'll show it to you. Okay. So again, this came out in July 76. So it was bought from Mountaineer Music, like we were talking about. And I believe that is a home address, and they probably don't live there anymore, so don't go bother those people. I showed you where their office is. The Millers apparently ran it, and they Junior circled his name. It was September 26, 1980. Which was, this is all so crazy. Because when I was, even this home address is right down the road from where I lived, September 26, 1980. I lived off Sissonville Drive. That house is off Sissonville Drive. It's the same freaking, and Charleston's not that small. I mean, it's the capital city of West Virginia. Kind of weird. So my point is, my dad, I already told me that he played arcade games and stuff back in the day. He very well could have played this exact same machine. They had it till 1980, and he was right in that area, hanging out in bowling alleys and stuff. Doo-dee-doo-doo-doo-dee-doo-doo. Okay, so it says Bally, Freedom, kind of. Junior, I'm not criticizing your writing, buddy. You wrote a lot clearer than I do. That's the number 3879. $300 paid by check, and I'm sure that's probably the customer. And then the collector's signature. So that's pretty cool. So it was a 4-year-old game, and they sold it for $300. So we know for a fact it was only operated 4 years. I mean, I guess, let me check something else here. I have one other thing I can tell here. I don't know. I don't know if that's the same person that brought it to me. So, I mean, there could be a situation where they sold it to another operator or something. But I'm pretty sure they sold it to somebody for their house, and it's been in their house since 1980. Or in maybe a couple people's houses since 1980. So pretty cool. Manufacturer's certificate. This has a bunch of glue residue on it. So this was probably, if I was going to guess, stuck on the coin box, which isn't in there, or on the back door maybe. Maybe. I don't know where that would have been. But it's the same serial number, so that's pretty cool. It has a bunch of these little inserts so you can change the replay score. Those slide inside of this little instruction card. So they always send a whole ton of those with the game whenever you buy it. Okay. And then it has different instruction cards. The reason they would give you different ones is because they said different things. So this one says, for instance, that you get a replay if you match the numbers, and this one doesn't. So it's just depending on how you had the game set up. You would put whatever card was appropriate in it. Here is the warranty card. Operator, please fill in card and return. No postage required. Was equipment received in good condition? Yes, it was, because it's still in good condition. Freedom, serial number. Operator, street, address, city, state, zip code. Remarks, recommended improvements. So they didn't feel like that was necessary. They didn't ever fill it out and send it back in. I guess that's not a warranty card. It's more of just a feedback card. Very smart of Bally to do that. But that little receipt's kind of priceless, isn't it? Let me pull this stuff out real quick and just make sure that, I just want to make sure that somebody's name isn't in here or something. I don't want to give you some gentleman's phone number. All right, so there's no more personal information in it. Nice copy, original copy of the manual. Shows you everything. Bally made nice manuals. Look at this. This is just, if you work on a lot of these, all of this stuff is interesting. New ball shooter assembly. Now, you may have seen whenever we were working on that flip-flop that the ball shooter is all screwed up. It's because it's an old one that you can't get parts for anymore. So they had remodeled it. The reason that they redid it was because they wanted this, which is like a nylon sleeve. They wanted the nylon part to be in it, so that you can replace it. The old ones, like on this flip-flop, are a similar design, but it's metal on metal, and so it allows it to have wear. Right? So the new one, and this may not even be the right one, but this one certainly is. The new one doesn't have as much wear because there's a little nylon sleeve in there that you can replace. So at this time, it was the new ball shooter assembly. Right? So the manuals, you don't necessarily need them, and most of them are scanned online for Bally. But it's still cool to have, right? And that's, undoubtedly probably the one that came with it from the factory. And then Bally's very nice schematics, so check this out. Thorough enough for you? So the way these work is, over here you have your plug come in, and the service outlet is directly connected to the wall even if the power is turned off. So there's a little outlet inside so you can plug in a soldering iron or something. And then one side goes straight to the transformer, the other side goes through a switch and a fuse and straight to the transformer. And then the transformer creates a couple voltages. One voltage is shown here, shows how all the lights work, because they run off a different voltage because they're bulbs. And then the other side is here, right? And it shows how all of the solenoids work because they run off a different voltage because they're coils. There's also, well, if it'll focus. My focus is tripping lately. Come on now. So there is a separate winding if you want to high tap it. So you instead of having 53 volts, you can have 57 volts. Now who would do that? They call it high tapping in case you put it in a location that doesn't have that has weak power, right? But some people cheat and high tap it in a location that has regular power, and it makes everything stronger. I would never do that. So this line represents the neutral, and so between here and here is the voltage differential for the bulbs, and this line represents the neutral for the coils. It's the same line, obviously, right? And the way they did their schematics was it goes all the way down with this being neutral the whole way, and then when it gets to the end, they actually draw it where it circles around and continues so that you can draw more coils on the setup. Wild, but it's good to have those. So that's a quick little look at what we're starting with. I'm going to start doing this on most of the games whenever we get them in, just so that you can see kind of the condition we find them in, what's survived all these years, what they've still got. That receipt's just awesome. That's cool having that. And kind of what we're beginning with whenever we start working on it. So I hope you enjoyed that. We'll get to working on it on the next video. Leave your comments down below. Let us know what you think. Give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film it for you and to go through all of it. I could have kept all of this to myself. I didn't have to tell you about where this thing comes from, right? I didn't have to go through all that trouble. You may have enjoyed it, you may have not. But didn't I work hard trying to get that for you? So leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. We'd like to thank everybody that's been using our Amazon links. If you don't know about that, if you click one of the links down below to Amazon, and then you buy anything on Amazon of your own choice, not that we send you to, but if you buy anything on Amazon after clicking the link, it gives us a tip. So we appreciate everybody that's been doing that. It's actually been going up again lately. Man, Y'all are too nice. So we appreciate that. We also have merchandise now, if you haven't heard. That's right, we got t-shirts and prints and stuff. So go check that out. There's a link down below. We appreciate everybody that's been buying our t-shirts and stuff with our shop logo on it. Designed by Matt, our arcade buddy Matt. He's really good graphic designer. So he made us a nice little logo. And then also check out our brother channel, my brother Donnie, who is literally my brother. All this stuff I'm telling you about West Virginia and the school and all of that, he knows all about that. He was right there with me when all that happened. So go make sure to check out his channel. He's a little crazier than I am, and he's always doing something interesting. Lately, we've been working on this little building that we bought, he and I, inexpensively. We're not rich. But we bought this little building that used to be a grocery store. And we're fixing it up just like I fix up these old pinball machines. So it's in the downtown of Jefferson, South Carolina, a little town that the downtown area is a little bit, I don't like to say dilapidated or anything like that because it's a good town with good people. But it's a little forgotten, right? So we're helping fix up some of the buildings, bring it back a little bit, get some new tenants in there and things, and it's been working out great. So if you like stuff like that, you might want to check out his channel and see what we're up to next. But we will see you on the next video. Leave your comments below, and I'm going to go out in the rain.